Right, hello everyone. I'm Jason Lucas from the product development team at Experian Targeting. And today, as it's just been announced, I'll be discussing some of the insights we've realized in our recent exploration of electric vehicle demand. Before I start though, I'd just like to thank my colleagues Will and Max for their help in putting together, this is always a team effort, for developing the models and the maps I'm going to be looking at today. So the adoption of electric vehicles is leading to very rapid change, what we might call the charging landscape, so the availability of charging points, whether at home or on the move. And this has potential impacts for both public and the private sectors. Our team at Experian, we've developed a framework to explore these impacts, modeling who is purchasing electric vehicles, where they live, their access to charging, whether that's at home, again, or on the move. These spatial insights, as you well know, can be visualized, so we could quickly identify potential areas of high demand to allow for priorities in developing the charging infrastructure, so investment areas, to assist with demand management for utility companies, for electrical supply, or even to support things like automotive network development, so they can plan where they need to sell more electric vehicles. And our initial analysis for the UK is going to inform the next steps. So we look to expand this approach out across other areas of the world. So the adoption of electric vehicles began, if we go back to 2014, looking at vehicle registrations, there were only about 500 in that year. And the registration doubles roughly every year to 2018. And then accelerates much more rapidly from 2019 onwards. As you can see, here the volume is driven a lot by company car share schemes, or even sort of incentives along those lines, especially because of tax breaks for having an electric vehicle on a company car share scheme. But there are also sort of non-incentivized purchases of electric vehicles, registrations of electric vehicles are really starting to pick up as well, and there's about 45,000 of those last year. And this is only looking at battery vehicles, not hybrids or the various combinations. And this is all being driven by the cut-off point of 2030, when there'll no longer be any new petrol or diesel sales in the UK. And this rapidly increasing demand for electric vehicles impacts across a number of sectors. For example, automobile dealer networks, they'll want to know where future demand will be located so they can focus their sales efforts for new and used cars, as well as being able to identify where they may need to invest in EV repair skills for their service technicians. On the other hand, utility providers will need to understand where electric vehicle customers will be in order to plan for increased electricity demands, to engage with those customers around tariff options for electric vehicles, or even just think about energy charges. And obviously this is something that's very much come to the forefront in the last few months as petrol and energy prices are ever increasing. A local authority needs to be able to identify areas for charging point infrastructure investment, as there are nearly 10 million UK households that don't have their own driveway, so nowhere to put an at-home charging point. On a national level, government might also want to identify particular target areas where they might want to, again, support the councils and their electric vehicle rollout, or think about where they might target campaigns to persuade those who are more reluctant to purchase electric vehicles. Finally, a charging point installer, they'll be able to predict demand for new installations, so they can target particular postcodes, particular homes even, and look to sell either directly to private customers or again partner with local councils to support the development of infrastructure schemes. As a framework to explore who's driving electric vehicle demand and where that investment is going to be needed, our models estimate the likelihood of someone purchasing a new electric vehicle based on socio-demographics, because that's what we do, looking at the previous purchase patterns and their attitudes to electric vehicles, or even just green issues in general. And this helps us find areas of high demand, which we can then combine with the driveway model to look at areas where the infrastructure is going to need more development. So just a quick recap before I look at the models. In terms of a segmentation process itself, so we take Experian's Mosaic, there are other segmentations available, but we segment 51 million UK adults, 25 million households into 15 groups with 66 subtypes. And this is based on the usual characteristics of age, income, family structure, and we cluster together all those individuals who are similar based on, for our purposes, marketing-related variables. So we've used our mosaic segmentation to profile the adoption of electric vehicles. So again, looking at registration data from the last several years, we've split these into 5 rough groups of electric vehicle adopters. There's a leading edge, what we might call enthusiasts. They're generally the more affluent groups. They only make up a small proportion of the market. There's what we might call the visionaries, suburbanites, again, more affluent, some with families or older families, but for whom green issues are probably more important. There's a large group, what we might call pragmatists, who know they're going to have to buy a green car, an electric vehicle at some point anyway. They might share these green aspirations, but it's really about the practical pressures pushing them. But there's a large part, sort of over here on the side, of people who we might say are lagging behind. So they need more persuasion or more incentives to adopt an electric vehicle. This could be around lower incomes, could be around climate skepticism, or even simply just less need of a car. So we combine the socio-demographic profile with data from the DVLA. So that's for those not from the UK, it's the government body that manages vehicle registrations. We look at who's buying those electric vehicles and how that is changing over time. And this allows us then to apply this model at household level and rank each household in the UK with propensity to buy a new electric vehicle. As you can see, this is sort of mapped here on the right, who's showing the changing demand over time. And then we combine this demand model with a separate model of driveways based on sort of property characteristics and urbanity measures. And again, we use that model to score out the same households who are likely to have a driveway. We validated this model with a few spot checks, looking at satellite data. Obviously, we checked all 25 million households versus their driveway availability. Also looking at things like Google Street View to double check the availability of driveways. As you can see, the model is not quite perfect, but it does have some good predictive uplifts, and it does separate homes with driveways from those without. We then take these onto a map and look at this at UK level. We can see if we just look purely at demand first. Most of the demand is in the southern parts of the UK, particularly in urban areas. You can kind of see motorway corridors sort of connecting some of the key urban areas in the south, a little bit in the, I would say, sort of Manchester across to West Yorkshire. There's a few strange anomalies here in the Royal Highlands, which we're still trying to figure out where those have come from. And if we take a look at the driveway model, so this again reflects, as you might expect, that homes in urban areas probably less likely, so red is not likely to have a driveway. So these are areas where there might be issues. You could think of sort of traditional terraced homes and things like that, where the frontage is right on the street. Again, this may not be the most insightful thing, but it does tell us that the model's working perhaps as expected. Again, there's some slight skews here in Western Scotland, just trying to figure out. But the real insight is when you combine these models together. So you begin to see hotspots where you've got demand for vehicles, but no driveways. So there's going to be a need for infrastructure investment. And again, these are the cores of larger cities, and also begins to pick out places along basically coastal towns. So you've got Brighton, Bournemouth and Poole, sort of running down into Cornwall, a few other coastal towns. And at a national level, this can, for example, then help government target wider public strategies where they look for local councils that might need additional funding, additional support to support the rollout of electric vehicles. If we just zoom in a little bit down to the southern half of the UK again, you can clearly see this kind of focus in central London. Obviously, car demand in London is a bit different from everywhere else anyway. But again, these sort of urban areas where there's going to be high demand for vehicles, for electric vehicles, and people are going to need support in order to be able to charge these and be able to drive them anyway. And then if we take this down to a even more local level. So I've chosen Nottingham as an example because that's where we are and I know it better. So you can see in Nottingham, the household demand is much sort of localized. This is Nottingham city centre, but there's also pockets of demand running out. So this is Nottingham University. So around the university and sort of areas that feed into student housing or lecturer housing, as well as in some of the more affluent suburbs running out west of the city. So there's very high demand, also on the northeast. Again, looking at these sort of affluent areas that people are going to be adopting it sooner. And then looking at driveway availability, so these same suburbs come up. Most of these people in these sort of newer suburbs, so these are detached, semi-detached houses from the 20s and 30s. They've got more space. At-home parking is the norm. Whereas in areas in the city centre, there are either flats or terrace houses, things along those lines, where there's less room to park. So there's going to be more demand there for some sort of infrastructure investment. And again, if we put these models together, we can see those key areas that are really important. So where the council is going to need to make some investment, these areas near the university where there's high demand, but needs more space. So again, areas where there's lecturers and students or high demand, whereas areas where we saw demand sort of in the wealthier suburbs, a little bit more that way, they don't necessarily need that extra support from the council or the electricity company because they can have a private installer put one in their driveway. And if we map the current publicly available charging points to this, so it gives us another layer of insight, so we can look alongside where demand or availability is going to be, and this can help people like Tesco's or the public, again, councils or NCP or something along those lines, think about where they want to put those charging points. We could also combine this with gravity modeling, so looking at commuter flows or even workforce flows, and this kind of helps again, with that planning aspects for retailers or workplaces or car park owners, where they want to put their charging is an incentive to attract more customers, because I could go to Tesco because I know I can charge my car there for an hour, or even workplace incentives for new, more ecologically aware employees. And finally, we can even take the model all the way down to the household level. And this very local level, again, helps with targeting exactly where you want to focus your efforts. So if it's a local authority looking for particular neighborhoods, you can even get down to the street level or really right down to the household level. So where you want to target information campaigns, infrastructure investment, or where you need to get more involvement from the utility providers, the electrical companies. And of course, the same information can be used by independent contractors who want to go out, find postcodes or household streets where they can offer their services for the development of new charging infrastructure. So we're planning to expand this process outside of the UK, but it's not what you would call a simple lift and shift model. And this is where all the different variables come into play, because every country has got its own approach to electric vehicles, to charging, different adoption rates, different car purchase patterns, and obviously different existing charging infrastructure. So we're currently working across all the various markets, so we can link country-specific data, car registrations, or surveys like YouGov data to give us a bit more behavioral information with our existing socio-demographics, and we're using our worldview global data set as a basic building block of this, so a different kind of grid set. All right, and finally, I'd just like to say many thanks for your time. I know it's getting very close to lunch. People are getting quite hungry. But if you have any questions, come and find us at lunchtime. We're at Stand 7 in the Education Centre. Thank you.